This is SaaS Connect One-on-One, brought to you by the Cloud Software Association, a podcast for conversations with industry leaders in the world of SaaS, focused on their experiences and challenges with building and developing partnerships.
Hello, today we have a really exciting guest, Jay McBain, an analyst from Forrester, as he so humbly describes himself. But there's no one in the industry who has spent so much time over so many years with so much depth, talking to so many players, understanding what the market for cloud software distribution is, the channel in general. He is the light in the dark sea that we all need. He put out a really excellent report, What I See Coming for the channel in 2020. And today we're going to ask him about it. So thank you so much for joining us, Jay.
Well, thank you. Pleased to be here.
So you made the analyst mistake, Jay, of predicting the future. I know it's 2020 and we all have 2020 vision statements we have to put out, and it could get you into trouble when you're doing a lot of visionary work and predictions of the future. But reading your report, you're not really talking about my prediction for what's going to happen in 2050. You're really talking about current trends you're seeing on the ground. Can you tell me a little bit about what research went into building this report?
Yeah, sure. So I've spent 26 years in channels. I've always had this view of, I'll say about 18 months to 3 years in the future, because that's the window where you need to start planning today. And everything in the channel takes 18 months to 2 years to really come to fruition. So that's the lens that I put it on. I was a futurist at IBM for 17 years. I've done a lot of this work, and the great thing about predicting the future is nobody catches up with you later on if you're wrong and says, hey, you got it. But predicting the future, at least short-term future, is just a matter of collecting a number of trends. And right now we see a dozen different trends that are all converging. And it's not a crystal ball type of thing and flipping a coin, but it's more of an evolution of a bunch of trends as they collide. And what I hear, I think last year I wrote down there that I talked to pretty close to 500 different companies. And I spend a lot of time at some of the largest companies like Microsoft and AWS and Google in the cloud. But then I talk to startups. I ran a startup as a CEO for 7 years. So I try to look at it from every angle and see if I can pull together, things that make sense and that CEOs and heads of channel that should be thinking about.
And one of your other reports that you wrote showed that just the growth of channel technology, which is an indication of what's happening in channel, because you need to buy these products to run your channel, went from the year before a 4.5% or so growth to now 17-18% growth in the last year. So something's happening in the channel. It seems to be there's been a movement, and that's what we see at the Cloud Software Association. Are you seeing the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've been pretty vocal about this, for a number of years now. And a couple of years ago, I made up a word I called shadow channels, and this idea that every company in the world is becoming a tech company. Every service company in every industry, all 27 industries, is becoming a tech services company. And then every person, this new buyer, the line of business executive who make 2/3 of all cloud decisions today, they are spending 51% of their time now on tech. So they may run marketing or sales or operations or finance or HR, but guess what? They're now spending the majority of their time as tech people. And so the world is coming in. And for us, it's trying to chart this star system. It really is celestial when you get to all these moving parts and what it means. And really in this year, we call it the trifurcation of the channel. It's this idea that the new buyer spends so much time digitally, 68% of their time digitally. Who is that influence channel early in that journey? We've known about the transactional channel now for, I date it back to August the 12th, 1981. IBM kind of put together the first tech channel. Compaq came in and signed up everybody who could fog a mirror after that a few years later. A few years after that, Microsoft then came in and even signed up people who couldn't fog a mirror. So then we got to this channel today, the tech channel of 600,000 companies that we know and love, and there's 150 trade shows, and there's 54 magazines they read and 64 podcasts they listen to. So it's a little bit of a walled garden. But guess what? When everybody becomes a tech company and everybody becomes a tech services company, we have millions of people coming in, but they don't compete with this traditional channel. They do different things. They're outside of the transaction.
There's a lot of ideas in there. I like to go, I told you I'm going to play Palooka. I'm going to pretend that I don't know what I'm talking about. I think actually some hard questions, but there's some things in your piece around these changes that are stunning and surprising, like the channel may be shrinking over time. I think you mean the transactional channel. But let's before we get into like what shrinking means numbers. So let's talk to some of these numbers. And I'll tell you, like I'm talking to investors right now for my own startup, and these numbers that I throw out about the software market blows their minds because they're so focused on SaaS. They don't understand how big software is. Software really is eating the world.
Yep.
You throw this absurd number, but it's not absurd if you know anything. There's a $13 trillion B2B market. What is that? Like, what is that made out of?
Yeah, so let's start at the very top. So in the world, if you collect GDP of the 206 countries, there's $80 trillion a year that are spent. If you take that down a layer in B2B, business to business transactions, and that could include business to business to business or business to consumer, but there's a middleman. 75% of the world goes indirectly. You know, you buy a car from a dealer, you buy a TV from a retailer, you buy a jar of peanut butter from a grocer. Almost everything you do is indirect. So you can think of $60 trillion as being the indirect number globally. If you look just purely B2B, take out that consumer element, it's about a $13 trillion market overall. But that includes more than tech. So
right.
Now we're talking about B2B tractors and forklifts, and we're talking about paper clips, and we're talking about everything. When you look in the tech space, the overall technology industry out of one of 27 industries is a north of $5 trillion. Back to the last number I gave you, the B2B number, the B2B, business to business technology number globally is $3.53 trillion. Okay? We're stepping down the ladder here.
Yes.
Of that 3.53 trillion, 64% of technology globally is spent through a channel. So that's 2.26 trillion. That's the North Star. So that's the number today that represents what the channel delivers from a transaction point of view. And they might be
is that just software? Is that hardware? Does that include the services on top of it? What is that?
Everything.
Okay.
So that is every dollar spent on technology from a hardware, software, and services. And by the way, today there's about 40 layers of the tech stack. It's not as simple anymore as talking about hardware, software, and services. That includes telecom.
Yeah.
It includes professional AV, copy print, all the other kind of sub-industries around tech is all inclusive in that number.
Yes. And then of that number, how much is software as a general category, including license and subscription?
Yeah, so out of the 3.53 trillion, which businesses spend on technology, 795 billion of that is spent on software.
Oh, wow. It's really grown since last time I think we talked. It was just over 500 billion, I think, the last time we went into these numbers.
Yeah, and we break that down into operating systems, middleware, applications. We have a mobile section, custom built software. So, we look at it in several that's what I talk about, these 40 layers of the tech stack. Yep. It's not just software anymore. It's applications. And then you can break down applications into, cloud-based, as well as on-premises and other types of applications as well.
Well, ignoring Candy Crush, which by itself is huge, how much of the software license, like the software market, is cloud-based software, SaaS, basically? Because that's our audience.
Yeah, so SaaS is, represents about a third of that today, but it's the fastest growing by far. If you look at, there's 175,000 SaaS companies today. Mm-hmm. And, you look at the large ones, and many of them are public. You get to look at Salesforce and Marketo and NetSuite, get to look at ServiceNow and Workday. they're all growing at about 30%, year on year. And they have been for Salesforce 2 decades at that amount of clip. You look at the infrastructure side, Microsoft just announced 67% growth on Azure. Mm-hmm. You saw AWS in the last couple of days report 54, I think, percent growth on AWS. Google is showing 50% plus numbers. So the cloud growth is far outpacing legacy licensed software, which is growing at small single digits.
Yes, and I think you're including in that $200-300 billion number the platform services and SaaS itself. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, your Forrester pegs SaaS, just the software category, is about $100 billion for like application software.
Correct.
Right. And just compare that to Microsoft, which is like well north of $100 billion of revenue itself. Yes. That's the thing that I think blows people's mind, is how much room there is to grow yet for SaaS. And selfishly, that's my people who I represent. So I'm fighting for them today.
My peeps.
That's right. And then, by the way, when you say 64% of this overall market is indirect, SaaS is not experiencing that. What do you think is the level percentage indirect is being sold in SaaS right now?
This has been a little bit of a stubborn number. So you mentioned Microsoft. Microsoft sells 96%. They're a pure software company, other than some hardware products now. But of their software number, it's 96% through the channel. And so that skews the number upwards. But the general SaaS market, if you look across the 175,000 SaaS companies, is south of 30%. And this has been stubborn because Salesforce has been selling for 20 years. It's not like, this is new. And, many of these companies are now, over a decade old. And in the normal, tech industry maturity phase, this is the point where they would be north of 50%. Mm-hmm. Some of the, bigger ones should be north of, 70 or 80% now channel. And it just hasn't happened. And I'll give you one example that happened recently. Salesforce announced to double their revenue, which is just south of 20 billion right now. In the next 4 years, they require 250,000 new partners. So that's their recruiting goal for the next 4 years, is 250,000 new partners. The same day they announced that, they shut down their resale program.
Again?
They want 100% of the revenue to go through the App Exchange.
Yeah, okay.
And they're doing a bunch of work, and really cool work, in terms of convincing partners of where the money really is outside of transaction, how they can make money in influence, how they can make money in retention, and what exactly, they call it a multiplier effect. For every dollar Salesforce sells, there's $4.65 that the ecosystem can go and make at 75% margins today.
Yes, it's interesting. You told me they just closed down the resale program again. They closed it a few years ago. I was on stage with a Salesforce person at the time. It was pretty embarrassing because there was a room full of resellers, and he knew that he was in trouble being there because he had just shut down the resale program, mm-hmm. and they were very unhappy. That was a year that Microsoft had a write-down of $10 billion, which was more than Salesforce's entire annual revenue. And they're all like cheering and shouting that when I mentioned that. And then, but they rebuilt the resale program and they killed it again.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I mean, what they say publicly, you can still resell Salesforce if you try hard enough. There is a program in place, and you can be part of that. But what they're trying to convince people, and I actually think it's good. So, this is why I talk about this trifurcated channel. I mean, 90+% of influence and delivery is done by the channel. And for all of us, we've spent 4 decades fixated on this transaction number. And this is the gold, silver, bronze program that 10,000 different vendors have. And, we always get so caught up in it. And the channel's importance is not at the transaction layer. Because by the way, the buyer, 73% of them actually think buying, it's the Amazon or Alibaba effect. They think buying on a marketplace is pretty cool. And the average Salesforce buyer, for example, is going to buy 7 different pieces of software. It makes sense to procure them and provision them and be able to, manage that all through the same marketplace, as opposed to Larry in the white van who has to go make a relationship with 7 different companies and distributors and pull all that together, which takes months. what you could be doing in minutes.
All right. This is going to be the heart of what we're talking about, because these are we're going to change the channel. I had to make that pun, because things are happening in people are learning. They're trying different models. Salesforce has tried and retrenched. And this is what you're saying in the piece, is that this part of the channel is shrinking, like this reselling channel, the transactional buyer is shrinking, because people prefer to buy direct. I mean, that's the current market. However, like you said, these numbers seem upside down. Most industries everywhere, I mean, it doesn't matter whether software or shoes, you're going to see a growth in indirect and value chain development. Mm-hmm. And so the problem with this, whether you agree or disagree, is that the software companies have to build an army internally in order to go reach everybody in the world, which is basically impossible. And so they're going to hit that growth ceiling, right, where they can't actually grow without the channel. And this is the gap, right, to get us into the market. So what is happening? Like, first you mentioned like only 20% of the partners are transacting, of the resale partners are actually succeeding in making a transaction. Is that normal? Is that just recent? Or is that how, I mean, my experience as a channel has always been, there's a lot of dreamers and not a lot of, achievers, right? Is that the case, or is this different?
Yeah, I want to be careful with language though. The indirect side of the equation is not shrinking. It's growing. Yes. It's just not growing as fast as direct. So okay. Both sides of the equation are both growing. Like the tech industry is the fastest growing industry in the world. Right. Both okay. sides of the equation are taking advantage of it. The fact of the matter is the parts of the business that we just talked about, infrastructure and SaaS and everything else, are growing at such a fast clip, and their percentage of indirect is lower than the other, which it's the revenue that it's replacing, more of the traditional on-premises type of hardware and networking gear and things like that, that it's just the percentage is shrinking. So if it's 64% today, I think it'll be 63% in a couple of years, 62%, 61%. And then, when we finish off the decade, it'll probably be in the 50s. It'll be 50-50 in terms of the way this market goes forward. That being said, the channel itself is exploding. Every company in every industry is becoming part of that ecosystem. And the amount of opportunity is exploding. So when I mentioned the $4.65 number for Salesforce, mm-hmm. all the companies are coming to Forrester to get their own number, to do that analysis. And Microsoft has some products, for example, that are close to $8 yes. of ecosystem value for every dollar they sell. So the actual opportunity for the channel is huge. And that Salesforce number, 465, is actually going to be $5.80 5 years from now. It's growing in terms of what the value or the multiplier effect is for every dollar of SaaS that goes into a company. So it's a huge opportunity. We can't come off and say that, the channel's in trouble. We have to come off and say that the resell part of the channel is the part that, we have to focus on.
So what you have, one of the points you make that I think is really, really strong is the trifurcated channel. So you have the transactional channel, you have the influencer channel, which I think is the most interesting, and the well, I'm putting words in your mouth, and the what's the third side? The retention channel. Thank you. So yeah. Tell me. Let's first look at the influencer channel. I think this is by far where most of us are investing in. So that's affiliates, alliances, referral programs. What's happening here and why?
Yeah, so these partners in the influence channel, have different business models. They have different ways of getting paid. They have different ways of going to market, but they may look like to you, alliance partners, affinity, affiliates, advocates, ambassadors, digital influencers, super connectors. But the way you're going to measure them is on attribution, because they don't actually collect money from the customer. And what's driving this is the new buyer. So I mentioned that 65% of all SaaS spending today is happening outside of IT. What used to be called shadow IT or rogue IT is the new normal. It's 2/3 of all tech projects today. And by the way, that's growing to 80%. This is the future. So this is what we're dealing with. When we look at the psychology, the behavior, when we look at the new buying journey of these players, because by the way, in a few years, 75% of them are going to be millennials. It's a demographic shift. There's a firmographic shift. There's a number of things going on at once. But to oversimplify, buying software today is kind of like buying a car. So the digital journey, that first 68% of the journey, 81% of people start with a Google search. And based on what's on page 1 or page 2 of Google results, they then go on a journey of clicking and reading ebooks and listening to podcasts and dialing into webinars and going to peer groups and then going to social networks. And they bounce around, kind of like you do when you're buying a car. You go online, you configure the car, you go and figure out the pricing, you know within $100 what you're going to spend. And then, by the way, when you're done that digital journey, when you actually arrive at the dealership, everything breaks. You know more than the salesperson ever will. They sit you down for 8 hours and get you the deal, and it's just a broken process. The same thing is happening today in software. I've been through this digital journey, and in 71% of cases, they actually make vendor selection at the end of this digital journey without, kind of engaging, in a traditional procurement or, working with salespeople all the way through.
I mean, who loves talking to salespeople, and so what the channel strategies are, and by the way, this is true, this is all happening, but I have a contention with you, which we'll get to later, about whether or not this is really efficient, because a lot of buyers have other priorities in their lives to meet their business objectives internally, especially in the B2B case. And technology procurement is incredibly time consuming and risky, and they don't have time to be an expert. And so this is the tension that's happened, right, because of the nature of the market. But because a lot of these people can't afford to become an expert. So the influencer part of the channel is this huge growth of expertise, right, and trusted authorities that are not necessarily transacting. So who are these players? I mean, obviously you have your digital, your agencies, marketing agencies, Accentures of the world as well. That's one group. They're going to help you with implementation as well. You have Forresters of the world making recommendations, but there's a lot more than that. So who are all these players? Who are these players, and who? It's basically a community. So what does a SaaS company have to do now to manage this side of the buying journey?
Yeah, so I've published quite a bit of research on this, and it really is a community marketing initiative. So when you look at a buyer, there's 35 million kinds of buyers, and that's a real number. So, there's 10 different lines of business. There's 297 sub-industries. There's 200 countries, states, provinces, whichever way you want to look at geography. Sector size and segment of the customer, from SMB right up to, enterprise Fortune 500. And then you've got 40 layers of the tech stack. So if you multiply all 5 of those vectors together, there's 35 million cells in the heat map today. And so if you build SaaS software today, you're going to be covering a number of those places of the heat map. Once you determine those places in the market that you fit best, that your software, that your solution fits best, what's interesting is you can ask those customers 3 simple questions. What do you read? Where do you go? And who do you follow? And by the way, you can do this digitally, and you can have a $10 an hour intern do this for you. Once you figure out what they read, there's 30 different ways to read today. So, you read your email newsletters, you read a magazine, you go to a webinar, you read an ebook, you listen to a podcast on the way to work. You might join or be a part of an association like yours that, can help you. You may be part of a vendor community or two, or distributor community. There's a number of, thought leaders and peer groups. So there's 100 LinkedIn groups. There's 25 Facebook groups. A lot of people use Reddit. I mean, again, there's a plethora of what you read. The average person, the average customer, and the average partner will travel twice a year to an event. They might go to Vegas for the big show, but they might go to a road show, but they'll do it twice. In the channel, for example, there's 150 shows a year. So, to your customer, if they're a, head of marketing at a mid-sized clinic with 50 doctors in upstate New York, you start to ask the question of what they read and where they go in terms of what influences them. To get a list of super connectors, to get a list of the people that, drive the most influence, is you need to look inside those logos. Go look at that magazine and write down who's on the front cover and who they're writing about and who's driving the content, who sits on the board of those associations, who's in those vendor communities, who does the keynote at those events they attend. Once you write down all those names and score them, I did this for the channel with 5,000 different people, and I score the top 100 people globally. It's an algorithm, it's a simple one. But the most visible people in your target market will be a whole set of partners in there. And by the way, of the 100 people, 2 of them might be competitors and 98 of them are potential partners of yours. But more than transacting partners, they probably look more like influencing partners. Mm-hmm. And you'll have them as a affiliate, advocate, affinity partner, alliance, whatever way you set them up, with a finder's fee or some sort of referral fee. And in a lot of cases, they don't even want money.
That would hurt them. That would undermine their authority.
Yeah, in some cases, like you mentioned, system integrators, they don't want to collect money because they don't want to look in front of the customer that they're biased.
Correct.
So, and in some cases, these people, I call it the Kim Kardashian mode. A lot of them are narcissists. If you give them a VIP badge, put them in the front row of your event, put them on your podcast, put their name in lights, they're going to be happy with you. They don't need money. And so the point is, this influence channel is completely new to most companies, especially traditional companies. And to SaaS companies, they're absolutely important because you got to figure that the average customer has 5 different people that come into that part of the journey, the 68%. And you're not going to be in the room most of those times. When you're not in the room, if you can have other influencers in the room that mention you, your chances of winning go up significantly.
So Jay, you're revealing all my secrets here when you're laying out the strategy. So my background, as I started the partnership team at FreshBooks, my title originally was a non-title, was marketing and community development, because my actual true background is all in communities. Yep. And this was our strategy. And I've tried to explain it to so many people, but in the OKR universe that we are in, they need revenue metrics around what I'm doing. But that's not how FreshBooks became so influential as a partnership play. It's because I focused on what you're saying, going in, and my title became Chief Handshaker, going in and just making relationships with as many of these people as possible. And we had a systematic way of doing it. It was like we enumerated it by type. Like, was it a media hit? Was it a software product? Was it just someone on social media we want to know? Influential customer, building relationships. And the set of partnership tactics that you would employ against them weren't just integrations or a referral program, which in many cases they hate because it undermines them, their authority. Was like, it could be flowers or taking them out for dinner, or like putting them on our podcast, or whatever it was, to bring them on side and make sure that they know we cared about them. And we did that, and our measure was logos everywhere, because if you want to have an impact in this influencer channel, our opinion was to just be where the customers are. Now, this was because the attention is spread, as you're saying now. 10 years from now, this is like a prediction. Are these super connectors going to be able to form, or is the tension going to continue to spread? Like, there's going to be a tension between more and more information channels and the need to bring it all together. It's like, how does that interplay going to work?
Yeah, so this is the point on ecosystem. There is room, and economic room, for these people to make money that are flooding in. And so whether you define yourself as an influence type partner, a transactional partner, or a retention long-term partner beyond the point of transaction, there is economic value there for you. The customers will pay for your services, and depending on where you show up and obviously the value you're providing is how much money you will make in that transaction. But when I talk about people flooding in, there is opportunities there to be hyper specialized 35 million different ways. So you had mentioned system integrators. If I talk about Accenture, they're now the biggest tech company in the world by employee size. They've got 450,000 people. They're bigger than IBM.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
And they buy a digital agency like every 24 hours. They're buying accounting firms. They're buying VARs and MSPs. They're buying everybody. And here's the way they look at the world. They see a big map on the wall of 35 million customer opportunities. And so they look at that mid-sized clinic in upstate New York with 50 doctors. They go buy the firm that has 80% share of upstate New York clinics. And it could be an agency, it could be a VAR, it doesn't matter to them. The owner of that firm now becomes the vice president of Accenture for mid-sized clinics in upstate New York. And I always joke that 400,000 of those 450,000 people are vice presidents of something. Yes. It's highly decentralized, but I could envision a world, and obviously it'll never happen, but I could envision a world that Accenture could hire 35 million people. And you could be a vice president of those 5 vectors. Like a cement company in southern Pittsburgh, finance buyer. I could get you into every one of those cells, and Accenture is going down market very, very fast. And, I worked at IBM 17 years and, we'd sit there with Accenture at banking accounts, but now you see them at mid-sized clinics. I mean, they're going everywhere, and they're talking digital transformation everywhere. And this is the model of system integrators are taking. And for SaaS companies, this is really important because they're highly influential. They're the ones creating the ebooks. They're hosting the webinars. They're running the association, and they're speaking at the mid-sized clinic event up in Rochester or Syracuse or Albany, New York.
Well, actually, this leads to my challenge to you about the rebalancing of things. Mm-hmm. So the big 4 are currently, based on my community members, all the SaaS companies, they're getting more and more aggressive about trying to find ways to take the transaction back into their hands. And not because necessarily they want the money to flow through their hands, because it's basically not valuable to them to have the money move through their hands for the dollars. What's valuable for them is taking more control of the projects for the customers. And this is not weird. This is a very normal human behavior. So why did Salesforce and all these companies bring the transactions into themselves over the last 20 years versus licensed software? Why is the channel still upside down for SaaS? My thesis is basically the subscription, right? So because it's an ongoing billing relationship, the middle parties don't want the billing on their books because it's a liability that will never go away, and they hate being in the middle of billing. But what the problem is they do need to sign up for these technologies and get these accounts and procure them, because their clients don't have time or expertise to navigate all this technology. That's why they hire the agency or the system integrator in the first place. And you can imagine a customer like the dentist, upstate New York, going to an agency. Agency is like, okay, great. What you're going to do is get a CRM, a telephone system, live chat, domain, and SSL certification, cybersecurity. And the customer's like, what? I'm a dentist. I don't have time for this. Right. If their sink was broken, the plumber's not going to ask them to buy flux and solder and piping and gaskets from Home Depot. And by the way, could you use my business card so I can get the referral discount, from Home Depot? That would never happen from a normal contractor. And it wasn't how it used to be in software. You would go to the VAR and they would go and set up the system for you by buying stuff on your behalf and selling it to you. But subscriptions are different. But the problem doesn't go away. These customers, the ones who are doing all the research, those are like the technology adoption curve. Those who are like the most interested and the most sophisticated buyers. But the late majority are going to come along and they don't have time for this because they have other priorities. So what's going to happen? Like, software is only get more and more complex. That's its fundamental nature. And humans are, by their fundamental nature, looking to find other human beings to take over the complexity from them. So what do we need in order to allow this part of the market to form? I think it's probably the only way you can get to the kinds of trillions of dollars of transactions that we're talking about for SaaS.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of went through three things there. So I'm going to kind of knock off three answers. And a couple of them might actually surprise you. The first one is, you talked about system integrators and they kind of want to take more control. This is the $4.65. If that dentist wants a CRM, they understand that $100,000 Salesforce deal could kick off a $500,000 project for them.
Correct.
And they're selling it as digital transformation. It's all about running a better dentist office, having better customer experience. And by the way, it has all that stuff you mentioned. You'll need SSL, but they don't mention it. That's all part of digital transformation. That's the $500,000 project to drive customer experience and to make your dentist, the best one in your town. That's the system integrator play. The managed service providers would have approached it differently. As you said, the VARs would go in and buy up all the SKUs and sell it in and do whatever. Managed service providers say, just go and be a dentist. Do what you do. We'll do what we do. We'll charge you per month. Things are going to be great. There's a big part of the market that wants that. Mm-hmm. By the way, it's 23% of the market that wants that. But that's a layer lower than, Accenture charging $500,000 to go in and make you the best dentist office in your city. What you're getting at the early part of the conversation, this is the most surprising thing for most people, is this idea of value. Why would Salesforce want the business to go through the App Exchange? It's easier on the customers. 73% of customers kind of like it that way. We predict that 17% of all transactions, B2B transactions, will go that way by 2023. That's a movement of a couple $1 trillion out of that 13 we talked about. Mm-hmm. It's a big, big movement of dollars away from traditional channels into pretty much direct, into a marketplace. So here's the deal. It has to do with Wall Street. If you look at the mega companies today, which was the joke earlier this week when Trump put forward the Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Amazon, the $1 trillion valued companies in the US, actually spells mega. If you don't think Google is
I'm Canadian, so enjoy.
And I'm Canadian too. So this isn't to be political. Those four companies are valued the way they are, not because of the products they have, which are awesome. It's the potential they have in the marketplace. And Wall Street's always about potential. Mm-hmm. So we've been talking a lot about Salesforce. So let's start there. So $19 billion company is valued today on the stock market at 180. That is beyond any recognition of anything. I mean, that's just so far in terms of a bubble, but it's not. Salesforce's model that says, we control the ecosystem through the App Exchange. Again, for every dollar, there's $5 coming or $5.80 coming in 5 years. They've put all the software on the App Exchange and they tax it at 15%. So I was one of those companies that they taxed at 15%. I was pretty happy with it because that was a pretty low cost of acquiring a customer, low CAC. The next thing was they're putting on all the consultants and they've put on all the VARs and MSPs and everyone in their ecosystem is now on the App Exchange. Hmm. Today it's free, but there could be a day because 64% of those long-term dollars, that $4.65, is professional services. There could be a day a few years from now that they decide to tax that at 15%. They're putting on all the hardware, Internet of Things, all the hardware is coming onto the App Exchange. So Salesforce is no longer a $20 billion company. If it can tax the ecosystem, the $100 billion at 15%, they double their revenue overnight without selling another license of CRM. If they continue to grow by 30% year on year for the next 5 years and they become a $100 billion organic, plus all their acquisitions they're going to make, now you're talking about a multi-$100 billion company that can tax an ecosystem that's $500 million or $750 million at 15%. This is getting to be pretty impressive. They'll be driving more than $180 billion in revenue at that time. This is why they're so valuable. Apple gets to charge the New York Times 40% to get onto Apple News Plus because they've got the eyeballs and they own the platform. All of these platform companies are wanting the marketplace to be able to tax it, to be able to take advantage of the ecosystem and the value they've created downstream. It's purely a financial play for them. and it's a very rich one.
So you're the one who introduced Wall Street. So I will play the other side of the equation. So, one thing that I was talking to you before, and I should disclose, is I have my own company, Appline, and we are trying to solve this problem. We're actually trying to solve it primarily for SaaS companies, is that to get into any of these markets, the subscription billing is the thing that's most expensive to engineer and change. And we found a way to skip past the billing integration to get into like the App Exchange, but also support these individual agencies who also need to find a way to sign up for software, but not be in the middle of billing and have their customers pay for it. We can handle that. One thing we've been doing, I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of agencies in the last year, and what they universally feel is the pressure, the squeeze of technology companies trying to cut them out or control their economic future. And what you're talking about is basically taking the gig economy and bringing it into high value services as well, and centralizing it around these major tech companies, which should give anyone a level of anxiety if you are in the SI space, because you're going to become subsumed into the Salesforce ecosystem. Or you can take the Microsoft approach that tries to build these companies up and not take the money. And maybe Microsoft will end up with Dynamics competing with Salesforce and drawing all these SIs away from them. And the customers will just use whatever CRM your SIs recommend because of it. We'll see. I mean, that's basically what's going to happen. The interesting problem is that a lot of the mainstream businesses, they just generally don't want to think deeply about vendor management for these complicated things. They just want it to be set up. And they don't deeply care how these things are purchased or the negotiation with the vendor, if they can outsource it to their agency to set them up. They do want to own their subscriptions. That's important. And the agency doesn't want to pay for it. They want the customer to pay for it. That's important. But when you have this push from Salesforce to squeeze out their SIs, their resellers, and try to bring it all internally, does not create tension with the channel, where they're competing with their arms and legs to all these dentist offices and whatever. Like how are they going to, like, aren't they fighting and competing with their own channel?
Yeah. And by the way, there's been tension for decades. Channel conflict and everything else is actually healthy, as long as you keep it at a healthy rate. There's companies that go over that line, but for most part, conflict is healthy because it keeps everyone, in the game and competing, and it's kind of a healthy economic model. But that being said, if you're a SaaS company, we like to talk about black and white in this industry, and nothing's ever black and white. Your routes to market and your go-to-market strategy is going to be messy, and it's going to be celestial. There's a lot of things and a lot of moving parts. So you're going to sell your product on Amazon and Amazon for Business and Alibaba, like a retail type marketplace. You're going to sell on the Salesforce App Exchange and the Microsoft Exchange and the Adobe one and the Oracle one and the SAP one and the IBM one and the NetSuite one, Marketo, Workday, ServiceNow. I mean, there's 20 of them that you'll probably sell on as well. That's going to be a chunk of your revenue. You're going to sell maybe through distribution. You'll sell through an Ingram, Tech Data, Synix, and their cloud to get to that part of the market. So if you look at your ecosystem and all these Venn diagram of overlapping partners, the procurement is going to be mixed. But we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars here. And, in the course of 175,000 software companies, 10,000 of them who have, kind of built channels and invested now, it's a big, big market, and it's going to be messy. But in terms of what you're talking about, there's going to be a big percentage of the market that, that type of offering solves for. And that might represent 20 or 25% of their revenue. And it could represent, 25 to $50 billion in TAM, market opportunity. But again, marketplaces aren't going to win. They're not going to take over 100% of the dollars. You're going to have your product sold through CDW on their marketplace. You're going to sell it through a bunch of different areas. And, this is why partnership executives, and this is why, channel professionals have jobs. They understand not only a go-to-market, but routes to market and what that spread optimally should be, depending on the product.
So this is absolutely true. Like you just have to be adaptive to how the market wants to buy you, however they want to buy you. And every customer is going to want to do something different. That's what the value chain is all about. The value chain adapts to the customer's needs, however they want to buy. It is really complicated though. One thing that you are also tracking is the growth of channel tech companies. So to close it off, where do you see the trends now in tools and technologies in the industry of what I call partner tech or channel tech to address these complicated problems? And I will say that channel execs do have a job managing this, but they're the same as any other buyer. It's too complicated for them to like figure out all these little avenues. They need some way to bring it under control, and that's what these vendors are providing. So where do you see the trends in channel tech over the next few years?
It's an evolution. 20 years ago, we went through sales tech. CRM really kicked that off, and we built a sales tech stack. And sales went from a art to a science. 10 years ago, it happened in marketing. Mm-hmm. The marketing automation companies, Marketo, Eloqua, HubSpot, Acton, Pardot, came along, and marketing became less of an art and more of a science. To the seventh decimal point. And now this generation, so we've gone through 20 years of direct selling and marketing, transformation. I think the next decade is channel enablement. There's 106 companies who build channel software today on my tech stack. And that's partner relationship management software. It's through channel marketing, it's incentives, it's finance, it's enablement, it's data. I mean, there's all different kinds of categories to help you build your channel software tech stack. The biggest and fastest growing, I always follow the money. We go back to Wall Street and private equity here, but the fastest growing is on ecosystem. For 3 decades, we've had these gold, silver, bronze programs. There's companies that can do this in their sleep. Mm-hmm. There's some really interesting stuff going on with AI and automation and other types of things in that area. But the coolest part of the market right now is attribution. How do you attribute, almost like Kim Kardashian, when she does an Instagram ad for $1 million, mm-hmm. How do you attribute that ad to the revenue that it drives? And this is the part of affinity and affiliates and advocates. I look at a company like Impact, who raised $75 million recently, mm-hmm. Take their Kim Kardashian software and move it into the B2B space. I look at PartnerEyes. I look at a number of companies like a Crossbeam, who's created a pretty unique escrow system for sharing mm-hmm. data with these new ecosystem partners. So there's a lot of movement and a lot of startups that are happening outside of transaction, to the left of the, in the buyer's journey. And then to the right, we talk about retention, and this is a lot of the work you're doing as well, is how do you manage these subscriptions? How do you manage the renewals and the retention, the upsell, the cross-sell? How do you manage all these moving parts? Because you have to re-earn the client every 30 days forever. There is no end to the buying journey now. And you need a channel, and you need software, and you need technology to be able to handle this at scale. Because you're not going to have a couple hundred partners. I talked about partners in the hundreds of thousands. AWS is going to have 1 million partners probably in 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. Microsoft is bringing on 7,500 new partners a month. 80% of those are non-transacting. So this is the type of software that's exciting right now, is not to manage your gold, silver, bronze program better, because I think we're kind of jumping the shark on that one. It's to generate these new ecosystems and understand the buyer and serve the channels. For every buyer moment, there's a channel attached to it. And how do we manage that forever? And that's the cool part of this.
Absolutely. I mean, when we didn't get into the retention side of the channel, but this is the last push to get back into the channel and give service contracts back to the agencies. They just need the tools so that they can be your customer success team, so they can stay in the game, manage the technology for the customer, not just for your product, but the entire system of tools for the customer. And that's the side that I'm in with Appline, is giving the right tools to the right people so they can do the right job for the right customers, which does not exist right now, but will be, I think, a big part of the future. So thanks for the endorsement. I'll sign you up right now. Jay, this has been really, really great. Is there any last thought that I didn't cover that you think we should have talked about the future of the channel, what people should be focusing their time on?
Yeah, I think it comes back to people. There's different skills. You can run a sales channel, a transactional channel. And I mean, there's thousands of people that do it extremely well. But when you get into the ecosystem world, I mean, you're looking at so many moving parts. Like literally you're looking into the sky and trying to figure out when the stars and moon are going to align. And you need a level of automation and AI. You need skills that go beyond, so, some of your channel conflict and some of your mediator and sales roles that you have today. And, people like alliance managers and that figure out community marketing as opposed to channel account managers. There's a whole people element of this that we could probably spend another hour talking about that is just as exciting as the tech and where everything's going.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, to be honest, look in the next 20 years, next 10 years, actually, this is going to be the real wild card around all this, because it's not just the people that you need to hire internally, but there's this conflict between centralization and Wall Street and finance, and on the ground people who are being gig economied, and they don't want that. And that's going to actually be a counterforce pushing back on all of this, because people don't necessarily want centralization. But that's another topic for another day. Maybe with volume vodka, I think. Jay, thank you so much. This has been really, really powerful. And it's great to hear an explanation of what the future could hold for all of our members. So, I can't appreciate it enough. And I hope to hear more reports from you year on year about how things unfold.
All right. Thank you for having me.
It's 11 o'clock.